Hey, what's up, everybody? All right, well, let's get started. In this episode of the Infrastructure Network, I'm joined by Michael Simpson and Barbara Robinson to discuss the persistent problems with sewer infiltration and inflow. We have some real conversations about some of the reasons why I&I continues to plague the sewer systems and the challenges faced in addressing this issue. Mike and Barbara both acknowledge the importance of public education, proper data management, and the use of technology to tackle I&I effectively. They also highlight the need for a shift in mindset and adopt new approaches in the industry. We hope you enjoy this content, and please follow, share, like, comment, and we appreciate you being part of our audience. Have a great day. Enjoy the event. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infrastructure Network. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I am your host. Today's guest is Michael Simpson with the M.E. Simpson Company and Barbara Robinson with the Norton Engineering Company. Thanks for joining me, you two.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Now we're going to jump into introductions. Now I'll start with Barbara. Give a little background of what you've been doing in the industry and infrastructure and a little bit of what you're doing today.
Sure. So I'm a civil engineer and I've been a professional engineer for 32 years. And for whatever reason, I've really mostly worked in sewers. I've done other things, but it's mostly been in sewers. The name Norton actually comes from Ed Norton of the Honeymooners, because Ed Norton was a sewer maintenance worker, and I go into sewers as part of my job a lot. Anyway, I opened my own company 8.5 years ago, and it's just been 100% sewers ever since. So everything sewer, particularly, so I look at design, construction, specifications, ways to improve newly constructed sewers, and also to get I&I out of our existing sewers. I particularly focused on the private side, so I've come up with a lot of best practices for private side I&I reduction. In 2023, we can't keep wringing our hands and saying, "Oh, private side I&I, what are we going to do?" There's solutions. They're easy. They're cost effective. Let's go. It's time to fix private side I&I now.
Love it, Mike.
I'm Michael Simpson. I've been in the business, the water business, for 40 years now. I'm the opposite of Barbara in the sense that I've been more water than wastewater. But I've been doing infrastructure work again for 40 years, and I'm like Barbara. I'm a person that started in the field working on water systems and inspecting manholes and touching, as I call it, touching stuff, actually doing the work to truly understand what's happening out there. And now I'm a huge proponent now of using today's technology to battle these things, with your manholes and with your collection system, and specifically the world of I&I that everybody complains about and can't ever solve. And I'm thinking, but I show you the tools and the technology to do this, and it's cost effective. And what's holding you back? Well, the age old, we've always done it this way. Mike, we've always, and of course, my joke is in this industry, in water and wastewater, is, it's going really, really hair on fire fast is actually the same speed glaciers move. That's when it's really rolling fast, because I've never met a group of people, and these are my friends that I hang with and go to meetings with, that are more resistant to change than anybody I know. It's because it's scary. If we have to change, what's going to happen? Maybe we could solve the problem in this particular pipe, and you don't have it anymore. It's done. Right. Didn't think of that.
Well, that's great you bring all that up, Mike, because that's exactly what my thought is about this whole I&I in the sewer systems, the decades of trying to find I&I in the system, trying to dictate where the issues are within the collection system. And most of the time, and that's why I called this episode the $1 billion leak, is why sewer infiltration and inflow still plague us today, is because we spend a lot of money on flow monitoring and these different ways of trying to find I&I. Every year, hundreds of thousands of dollars is spent trying to find I&I. And we still have the same problem. Like you said, it's still people complaining about the same problem over and over again. And habitually, we keep saying that's the way we've always done it. And I think we really need to get into the grasp of this, of what's really holding us back from progression in sewers. So the reason why I love both of you together today is because Barbara is very passionate about I&I, and I know, Mike, you're very passionate about evolving and bringing technology into our world. So I'm excited to hear more about how you both think about this and how we're going to move forward. And I'll start with Barbara. So as you've been in the industry a very long time, and we kind of mentioned about the expense of I&I and how it impacts our communities, where do you envision us moving forward in this space of I&I?
The path forward to me is very clear. I speak widely to the public. Well, I speak widely anyway, but I speak a lot just directly to the general public. So I've learned a lot about how the public perceives sewers, what they understand about sewers. The short answer is the public don't understand anything about sewers because we're not telling them. There's almost no public education about sewers at all in Canada. I mean, municipalities will send out bill inserts and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with a bill insert, but I haven't opened a bill in many years personally. Residents you need to explain to them, in person, how to operate your sewer, what to do with your sewer at home. And one of the reasons we're not doing this, and this is one of my favorite things to complain about, is that, as we all know in the industry, 50% of the pipe length is on the private side, and 60% of the I&I is originating on the private side, which means we need to explain to residents about their private side sewer, how to operate it, whatever. But engineers don't have any training in the building code, which governs how the private side operates. So the average engineer can't go and speak to people like I do. I've trained myself in the building code, particularly as it relates to sewers. So I'm kind of a plumber just specifically as it relates to sewers. So I can explain to people all these things about how to actually operate their sewer. And when I explain to people the risk to themselves and to their own home by not maintaining their sewer lateral, people are just like, wow, you're kidding. Like, my number one thing that I tell people is, if you own a house, your sewer is the same age as your house. If your house is 75 years old, so is your sewer. Go home today, call a plumber, and get him to CCTV your private lateral. It costs $300. You should do it every 5 years. That's Canada's best practice. I actually wrote that in a CSA guideline that was published 5 or 6 years ago. Then you'll know the condition of your lateral, and if it's just about to fall apart, you'll know and you can fix it. And when residents do that, they're reducing private side I&I, not by us nagging and forcing or whatever, but by telling them your risk of flood increases drastically if you don't maintain your sewer. I tell people this and they're like shocked. They never heard of this information. And I get a lot of people contacting me after I speak to say, guess what? I called the plumber and it was this and it was that. So all those people now understand that they own a sewer and they're responsible for it. So I&I goes down. This is private side I&I, 60% of it. Let's just tell residents why they need to do it. And there's no argument. They go ahead and do it. So that's one thought for sure that I'm really keen on, public education.
Love it. Mike, what are you thinking?
What I'm smiling about is the fact that this is the same response I get from wastewater professionals. That the definition of insanity, of course, the simple definition is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, which never happens. But a lot of people just, again, I think they become habitual. And on the collection system side, the public side, the water department, wastewater department, utility side of the house, which the way we've always done this. We've always done this, and we've always done this. And it's the same infrastructure result I see on both sides, water and wastewater. The maps are out of date. We have no quality records. I don't know where all my manholes are. or my catch basins or whatever appurtenances you've got, whether it's a combined system, you got separate storm and sanitary, whatever you've got. And this in lies the problem from the beginning is our records are poor and incomplete. It goes actually to, the other side where you're looking at, I don't even know where my laterals come in. I don't know what my laterals are. I'm hearing here in the States, I'm hearing comments being made, whispers that people are about to get hammered with a consent decree and they need to go and they're going to want to force them to check all their laterals because of I&I. And, a consent decree is almost a death knell to a utility. And again, I'm a huge proponent of using technology and moving past just the camera as an example. Now, on laterals for somebody's home, I like your idea, Barbara, on the private home, calling the local plumber and having them come do it every 5 years and see what's in there.
It's no
Because
brainer.
that is the simplest thing and quickest thing to do, for the
And the
most part.
smartest thing to do. And the smartest
Yeah.
thing to do. It's easy.
Well, it protects your own interest because you can start seeing where stuff has started, because everybody's aware, especially if you're a 75-year-old home, they're all pretty much done with clay pipe. That's to this day, it's still now more people are using PVC, but regardless, so you've got all these little sections of pipe, roots grow in, everything else. But the same thing happens in our collection systems, though they may be a larger diameter in collecting everything. Same issues start occurring depending on how deep it is. And once again, you're running through, and I point out to people the camera can't see below the trough, below the water line, so I don't know what's I'm quote riding over. Don't know how many holes or whatever are there. And the same goes where I go by every joint. I can't see up around the joint how much mortar's sitting there. Is it still there? Is there any left? I don't know. You're not going to be able to see that with a camera, uh, and so you're missing so much stuff. But then it goes to the general, where are all my manholes? And you can't even answer that question. So, well, what's happening on each of those structures? Have we done a quick NASCO look-see-loo and just take a look? Or do we bring the camera, LiDAR tool and do that? I mean, there's choice there. This is where the choices come in and the opportunities come in. And I'm like you, everybody I talk to, well, we're studying it, Mike. We've got this XYZ engineering firm and we're studying it, and we're going to do some monitoring, and we're going to go look at some things, and they're going to build me I'm like, how about we just take the money and go do the work? How about
Right.
just I said it's oversimplified, and they're like, yeah, but Mike, you just want to sell me something. Well, yeah, I said, yeah, I freely admit that. I wouldn't lie to you. You know me 40 years. What else am I going to say to you? But shouldn't we just do the work? So I can tell you, hey,
Let me jump in, Mike. Let me jump in.
Go ahead. No, that's fine. I'm sorry.
So there's
Yeah.
a new national best practice guideline in Canada called Developing an Efficient and Cost-Effective I&I Program. It was co-authored by myself and Dan Sanik from ICLR. This document, which is the first cut at it, so these documents that I draft need to be worked on by other people, but it basically goes through all the problems with where your data is, what format it's in, whatever. So I'm saying, and this is how I implement the programs. I'm not selling anything. I'm just helping people make their I&I better. I'm not even particularly selling Norton's services. I say to people, this is what I do. So I go to the municipality. I sit in their ops department. I go out with their ops for half the day, talk to them about where the I&I is, come back to the office, Some records are on paper, some are on the computer, some are in binders over there, whatever. I'm in their office and I say, "Where's the manhole records?" "Oh, they're in a bunch of binders over there." Oh, fine. I go to the bunch of binders over there, find the records, and apply it to the drain. And I work in small drainage areas. You can only fix I&I one drainage area at a time. You can't fix a huge drainage area. The other thing that bugs me about these huge drainage areas that are used in modeling is that every community, every subdivision has different characteristics. They were built at different times by different developers in different soil conditions, different groundwater conditions. There's no way you can blanket a huge area with the same. So the solution in each area has to be different. So when people say we don't know about the data, it's like, yeah, that's fine. So you sit in the office and you get the data, and don't forget to talk to your asset management people, because they have a different data set. Talk to your development people. Your design and construction group will have boreholes and stuff that they've done. I mean, you can gather all this data. Yeah, it's not pretty. It's not all in one database. And as I'm going through a drainage area, a smaller drainage area, we're updating all the records in that drainage area. So we're updating all the water information, all the sewer information, all the GIS. So the guys know now that when they go into that, and location of laterals, when they go into that drainage area, they know everything is correct. So it's slow and steady. It takes a long time, but that's what I&I is, one sewer at a time. That's the only way you can fix I&I. It's not a global, okay, we'll do this in the city. Not a chance. There's no way. So so I agree. Then there's lots of techniques to help them with that.
As
Oh, yeah. And again, going back to, the technology and and I'm a stickler on the collection system, the collection pipe itself, because I'm just fascinated that somebody stares at a videotape and they're reviewing 3,000 feet of pipe that they sent a camera through, and I'm like, wow, that's got to be riveting video viewing. And I have my theories and fears of what really happens, but that's where now today's technology, and the electroscan tool, that technology, that machine learning technology, as you pull that through the sewer between manholes, it's going to note where every hole, defect, whatever you want to call it, it's going to note where everyone is and what size it is. And so you then get to determine, the engineer, now I'm handing you a sheet of paper that says, this 3,000 feet, here are all the problems. And then you get to decide, well, gee, what should we do? Should we dig it up and replace it? Do we line it? Oh, is it just a couple of point repairs? Easy peasy. We can get this done in an hour, type thing. But again, it's actually providing actionable information that the department can use to correct the problem. Because you're right, it's sections of sewer, whether it's between manholes, I don't care how you slice it. The only way you're going to fix I&I is methodically do something with the pipes. And the manholes correspondingly, you need to look at you need to know where they're all at. As Barbara said, you need to take those binders on the shelf. And yes, we need to probably digitize and put them in the system, but someone needs to go out and look at them, you
there's
know?
a yeah there's sorry, Mike, and there's a couple
Oh,
things, as I've listened to both of you go back and forth, a couple things come to mind right off the bat. It's like, if we're talking about the private sector, right, we're talking about all the the laterals and things that are potentially leaking there, and obviously that's a source that we need to address in this whole I&I process of finding it. And then, Mike, you're talking about the wastewater community just in general, of how we've done things traditionally for so long. You mentioned about CCTV, smoke testing, things like that in previous conversations, and all those things add up to this dollar amount, that is billions of dollars that we're talking about. And you're talking about disrupting, you both are talking about disrupting a massive money making machine that is built, and it's been built for decades.
Yeah.
So how do you think we can really, bridge that gap that's been around for decades? I think
I
Got
think.
it. Great.
One of the things that that I've also recommended and observed over many years is that, so I'm particularly interested in finding and fixing I&I, not doing a bunch of studies, finding and fixing I&I, and I think Mike agrees with me on that. Now, if you want to find and fix I&I, developing a sanitary sewer model will not help you at all. Developing a model for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 doesn't help you find and fix I&I. To find and fix I&I, you have to find out where it is. To develop a model, what we do is you need your you need your topo mapping. You've got your GIS. We use flow monitoring. We calibrate the flow monitoring, but let's face it, you can never. You need like big storms to calibrate to big storms and small storms, and we never have the right number of storms. Calibration's never perfect. It's a model, of course. Let's not forget models are based on Manning's equation, which is based on laminar flow, which we do not have in sewers because there's chunky stuff in sewers. And there's flow monitoring error, there's operator error, there's GIS errors. So all these errors pile on top of each other. We build this really expensive model and spit out, worse areas. It's typically green, red, and yellow for how bad the areas are, and they're huge areas. And also the distinction between green, yellow, and red is always, it's a finite, green is like 0.1 to 0.2 and liters per second per hectare or whatever it is, and then 0.2 to 0.3 and then 0.3 to 0.4, but it's not a solid gradation. First of all, I'd like to see a color bleed technology where it sort of was a little more realistic. But then, so we do these huge models at great expense, and nobody goes, like, people don't typically go in the field and look at stuff, or not very much. And then we use the model to spit out the worst drainage area. The fastest way to find your worst drainage area in terms of I&I is to go and talk to the operators who operate the sewer system. You don't need to develop a model. You go and talk to the operators. And the other thing is, we were talking about CCTV work. I mean, CCTV is a great tool to I can find and I can estimate the leakage. Looking at a CCTV tape, I'm able to estimate the leakage at each location. But municipalities try to bite off, we're going to CCTV the whole system and try to bite it off all at once, and they get overwhelmed. This happens again. I constantly go into places who've had an I&I study done. They've got a database of all the CCTV, but they get overwhelmed, and you cannot flow monitor huge drainage areas when you're reducing I&I. It's got to be small enough to be able to observe the I&I and know that it's within a specific drainage area. So I use drainage areas of like 120 homes or something. That's enough that we can see a reduction, but we can actually get our teeth into it and fix one area at a time. And I just say to people, what's your worst area? Let's go there. Ask where does the flooding happen? I mean, that's the other thing in a model. They put the flooding experiences, but I can just look up the flooding in the database they have for flooding. We don't need a model for that. So this requires really rethinking what an I&I study is. That it should be an I&I program, not an I&I study. Now, models have their uses, to be sure, for capacity reasons. There may be a reason to develop a model, but if you're trying to find and fix I&I don't see that models are useful at all. And this is a real problem because that's mostly what we do. We spend most of the money in an I&I study developing a model that also is never maintained after it's built. The municipalities do not update it with all the new construction and replace sewers or whatever. And typical municipal employees do not know how to interpret a model. So sometimes they're all pipes models or bulk pipe. I forget when they trunk pipe model or trunk sewer models. They're different. They have different, they're used for different reasons, and the accuracy is different. And municipalities are just using these models because they're not modelers necessarily, without understanding their uses. So we need to rethink. We need to rethink all of that. It's really, really important.
And that's where I say technology comes in, and the new technology today. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, so for $500,000, if you handed it out and said, well, what can I get for $500,000? And my response is, I can scan approximately 35 miles of collection main and give you a report that will tell you where every defect is, how much water is entering through that defect. And yes, sadly, because we're a part of the industry and can't help ourselves, we rank them in in categories of red, yellow, and green, because you can't go completely away from the world, otherwise you'll be hated or ostracized.
Welcome to my
But
world.
but but, but talking about bleed, Barbara, that's the thing. The GPM, the gallons per minute inflowing on those charts is in the green, yellow, and red is a range. So you can methodically sit there and go, well, this segment of pipe between manhole A and B, my goodness, there's a little inflow, but it's not the biggest thing on my life. But if I
But
go right,
this is the
well, I'm going
problem
to
with
say
that.
though, but if I
We've
go
got a big
for
area that's shown as red, but it's not red in every single
right,
between every single.
and
Remember,
that's
communities.
why
Yeah.
doing these segments, doing them between manhole segments, and like I say, for that same 500,000, 35 miles of collection main is a lot of pipe. Last I checked, and here you are, and you're going to know by sections between manhole which section should we attack first to repair or to replace or whatever you want to call it, but to actually stop the I&I, to eliminate it or reduce it significantly, however you want to call it. But again, this is using technology instead of the same old, same old, same old.
So
Because,
this segues
yeah,
nicely into what I was going to say at the beginning. So I started to say I do a lot of speaking and all that. I&I is not an engineering problem. It's a political, social, and economic problem. So
Mm.
engineers know how to actually fix holes in pipes or we don't fix holes, we design fixes for holes in pipe. But the
right.
way municipalities operate is that we work on a yearly budget cycle. There's a 4-year election cycle in Canada for municipalities.
Same in
Drivers,
America. Yeah.
okay, the drivers of which pipes you're going to fix in which year are not dependent on just I&I. They depend on where do the water mains need to replace, where is the pavement bad. Like if we just look at I&I in isolation, we're not doing ourselves any favors, because practically speaking, your council is going to select areas that have other issues. Let's say trunk water main needs to be replaced. That's how they're going to select areas.
Mhm.
So it's no good just sending in a report with here's the worst I&I, because functionally that is not how municipalities work. They're based on a budget cycle. So we need actually all departments in a municipality. The building, I'm always talking about the private side. That's the building department. So we need the building department, the engineering department, the development people, all of these, the water group, if it's separate from the sewer group, all these things. And if we have 2-tier municipalities like we do in some places in Ontario, there's what the region plans on doing this year on those roads and what the city plans on doing on those roads. So this is it has to be much more practical. Well, obviously I&I fixing is practical, but selection of areas is not just based on
Yeah.
engineering information. So we need,
But the
that.
biggest thing, yeah. But I think the biggest thing is using technology to dovetail into what you just described. Is if I have the information and I know what's happening between those manholes, it can be part of the list, and then using yes, and I see that all the time here. Everything's on a 4-year cycle, and in some cases we know the politics, especially around here where Chad and I live. You have to do so much work in everybody's council district, or
Oh
you're
yeah,
not being fair. You're not being
yeah,
fair. I need something too.
yeah.
But again, by scanning these pipes and using today's technology, at the very least, instead of spending all kinds of money on monitoring and studies and this and that, if we take this money, pour it into knowing where the problem is, at the very least, it's on a sheet of paper in front of me, as it were. And as the sewer department works with everyone else, we can try and get the worst first
Mhm.
as best we can, but we can at least be methodical about it and not leave ourselves to, again, Barbara, I'm going back to spending $500,000 on a study. We studied the whole town. Great. The model says the whole town's red, but that
True.
may not even be remotely
Seen that.
true. It may be one neighborhood that's all the problems. We just did a small town in Indiana. We were pulling the unit through, and as we're pulling it through, we got stuck. And we thought, well, this is weird. We shouldn't be stuck, because the jetter went up and we're coming back. Well, we put a camera in to see what was wrong. It was loaded with gravel. Okay, and the cone, the cone on the electroscan device is picking up the gravel.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, we can see with the camera. Well, isn't this interesting? And we look up above and we called the county out and the city out. Turns out the county's uh, storm sewer trunk main crossed over the
Yeah.
sanitary. Well, the sanitary had a big old hole in it.
Yeah.
And when we sent the jetter through, all the gravel that was packed around the storm sewer,
Yeah.
it came loose.
Yeah.
And so we got jammed up in it. Now we were able to put a jetter from the other direction, and we were able to push enough water to free up the gravel so we could pull it back. But
Mm-hmm.
now we've got a huge hole in the sanitary sewer with a storm sewer sitting on top of it. So it was a really cool meeting of all the leadership of the county and the city as they were deciding the excavation plan, because repairs were going to happen quickly, because we had potential cross contamination and we could have a problem if something went upside down.
Right.
And but this is why I'm promoting or pushing people in their education. And this is the key part. Barbara, you're doing it in Canada, and we need to do more of it in the US. It's an education process to educate not only our engineers, but all of our sewer operators and even our politicians at a point to uh, uh, to go out and understand what's happening on a regular basis, not just theory or models or what we
Yeah.
assume is happening, but actual happening.
I think the easiest thing to kind of do is do what we've always done and spend the same amount of money every year and just never change. I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about before, and I think that's the path of least resistance that engineering firms have brought to the government decision makers over the decades, and that's the biggest hurdle: is how do you change an engineering firm's business model? Start to really think about that. If you're doing an hourly rate and charging hourly for everything you do, and something like a technology or a solution like yours, just simply getting a plumber to check the private side, right? $300. You could do a lot of lateral inspections for $300 with $500,000, right? So the little things like that is where we are hitting this hurdle of traditional methods, business models impacting what we're trying to bring into the future now with
Right.
technology, right?
Right.
So that's what, how do you change their business model? Like, how do you change their mindset?
Uh, Precisely, it's education. In this case, it's education of councils. So we need to get to our councils and provide costing information for what I actually costs. And one of the big things I've been working on for years is, for years, engineers, consulting engineers, always assign the cost of I, and I've argued with people for years about this, but I have a solution now. Assign the cost of I as just the cost of chemicals and electricity at the plant, chemicals and pumping at the plant. Look, when a drop of I gets into a sewer, it becomes sewage. We don't have a magic sewer I separator at the wastewater treatment plant. And when we go to expand a wastewater treatment plant, we don't say, oh, well, a lot of that's ionized, so we don't need to expand the plant. No, it becomes sewage.
That's,
So I costs the exact same amount as sewage costs. What you charge
but
your residents at the plant is the cost of I. What you charge the residents at the plant includes, okay, owning and operating the sewers, operating the wastewater treatment plant, risk, insurance, staffing costs, the whole shebang of what I costs is what you charge your customers, surely. And we often undercharge our customers. When we start costing I like that, when I run those numbers and present those numbers to council, suddenly the enthusiasm for investing money in I goes way up. And with the advent of climate change, I in our pipes, it means that there's more water in our pipes than should be there. If we can start to get some of that out, we can mitigate the impact. We're ready for climate change. We can convey larger and peakier storms in the same sewer. So it's time to get away from ionized, just nice to have, maybe. Oh, we can't. If we have to expand our plants, which we keep having to do because we have I&I, the cost of I&I is the cost of treatment at the sewage treatment plant. So again, this is a different way of looking at things, but I've never heard nobody's ever come up with a reason why that's not true. And we have those
Yeah.
numbers for every single municipality. We have them. It's
It's
on the sewer
it's
bill.
it's easier to upgrade a sewer plant than attack the I&I in the collection system. That's for sure. Uh,
Also, consultants like upgrading sewage treatment
that's
plants.
a lot of money. You're talking about anywhere from what does a wastewater treatment plant cost nowadays?
I
100
don't
million
know.
bucks, 25 million bucks. I mean, that's a nice chunk of change for a capital improvement project for an engineer to design and build. And look, I'm not talking bad about firms. We're so traditionally just held hostage by these methods. And that's probably a bad way to describe it, but that's what it feels like. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, now we're maybe moving into a consent decree. So not only did we spend this hundreds of thousands of dollars over the decades, maybe, hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Now we actually are not progressing and we're going into a consent decree order, which now you're getting forced to spend more money, right? And it really impacts the bottom line to the ratepayers that are out there. And
right,
we're no one's there's no accountability. It feels like
right. And the other
very
thing I'm
unique.
seeing is uh, sorry, I just lost my train of thought, which I'm famous for doing. Yeah,
That's
it'll
okay.
come back. Go ahead.
But no,
um,
it's that's where I was going to go with it, and I think Mike knows just how this system works. It's a process of where he has a barrier to entry. It's how do you convince those engineering firms to change using technology like he's using, and getting them to adopt to it and really see the value in it. But if they don't see the value or the cost benefit, if you're providing something that reduces their hourly rates, they're not going to accept it as fast until the city forces them to accept it. That's what I've
right,
learned through my years of
right.
field business with
So when we
irrigation.
talk to politicians, and not, I mean, I speak to engineers obviously as well, but when we start talking to politicians about these risks of not reducing I&I, that's where the decisions get made, at the political level, not at the engineering level. We all
Yeah,
know engineers give engineering recommendations, and what the city decides to do is what the politicians decide, not what the engineers decide. Engineers are just engineers, and I've always
yeah,
said, when I was working for other people, my job is to provide the best engineering solution. You can
right.
take that and do whatever you want with it, but in my report, I'm going to have the best engineering solution. And if you want to take that and massage it and do it a different way, which happens, it's a political thing, that's fine. I'm okay
Yeah.
with that. But my report's going to have the best engineering solution because that's my job, is to provide that.
Well, that's
So,
definitely what we need to have out there more often is engineering solutions being brought to these government decision makers more often, like you're doing, Barbara, for sure. And Mike, we got like a couple more minutes here. I want to get some last words from you about this whole I and what we see the future being and how we can move forward.
I think the future is truly is educating everybody from the top down, from the general public to the local politicians who oversee everything, to the folks at the sewer department, the water department themselves. And this is all about infrastructure. But my big thing is probably making the strong effort to use technology as your friend, and technology is going to help you uh, improve your system, and not to be afraid of technology. Basically, getting away from, well, we've done it the same way for 40 years. Why should we change now?
Mm.
It's the same as we used to have maps in a cabinet in a drawer, and we used to have our manholes in a binder. In theory, it should all be readily available on your GIS platform on your phone, where you can sit there and you're in the field and you can look up manhole number 4321, and you can find out all about it while you're standing on the street, in theory. And that's technology. That's moving the ball forward.
Yeah.
You can, and that's what we really need to do is continue to promote and educate uh, people with with this, and you know that this is out there. This will help you. This will make it better, and you just don't have to constantly spend money on studies when you should just be spending money on attacking the problem.
Yeah.
Is doing gathering the data, filling your computer full of all the information about your collection system, whether it's your collection pipes, your laterals, your manholes, or your trunk mains, your interceptors. It doesn't matter, but filling it full and then going out and finding out about each of those pieces and what they're doing or
Yeah.
not doing. And I agree with Barbara. I mean, I is nothing is everything that infiltrates and inflows instantly becomes sewage. And then you're right, our plant capacities, we wouldn't have to spend tens of millions of dollars increasing the size of the plant if we just fixed our I&I problem. All of a sudden, the plant would be perfectly sized and we don't have an issue, even if we do get that 6-inch rain in 24 hours, because the climate's changing and we're getting, I call them wild, but I guess the proper term is extreme weather events. But we're getting weather events. I don't care how you slice it, and the climate's changing, and I'm not going to go into a political discussion on whose fault it is because that's a waste of time. It's changing. So what are we going to do about
Yep.
it? And, we keep pouring money into bigger plants. That doesn't solve the problem.
Oh,
If we actually invest in the collection system and put effort into it, we can eliminate a lot of that. But it's education. I'm telling you, it's education.
yeah, for sure. You're right on. Barbara, moving forward engineering side, like what do you think?
Well, yeah, it's a slow, and let's face it, civil engineering is one of the two oldest professions in the world. The other is prostitution, obviously. So we're slow to change, and we need look when it comes to sewers, you can't
That's
just
awesome.
have cock to go off and try a new technology. It's got to last for 75 years. So I can understand why, and I'm conservative too when I make engineering recommendations, but we haven't changed how we do things in sewers for 30 years, and things have changed so markedly in our world that we have to change that stuff now. Here's a fast fact for you that nobody understands. I haven't had a chance to publish on this one. Well, two things. First of all, the way to calculate bulk I&I in your city is not influent monitor at the wastewater treatment plant minus pumped water.
Hmm.
No, we all know that pumped water is pumped water. We have water loss, so you need to take the sum of billed water, which you have to get from your finance department, which I can tell you they don't want to give it to you, because I did it when I was at the city of Kitchener, and I had to fight with them for quite some time to get that data. You compare billed water if it's metered, because the billed water is the water coming into people's homes. That's what should match sewage, wastewater, not pumped water.
Hmm.
So I see that municipalities are not calculating I&I correctly, probably because people don't realize that, although that should be pretty obvious. We talk about water loss all the time, but also municipalities are loath to report that they have high I&I, because then they're going to be expected to do something about it. The second
Right.
fast fact that I haven't published, but you heard it here first. When we calculate the uncommitted reserve capacity at a wastewater treatment plant, we are taking flows today minus the rated capacity of the sewage treatment plant. This is utterly incorrect. When we design sewers, we allow an I&I allowance, which will generate over the 75-year life of a pipe. So if half the pipes in your system, let's say a third of the pipes in your system are less than 10 years old, you need to add back in the room for I&I that you've left in the pipes to get to the wastewater treatment plant. So your uncommitted reserve capacity has got to be based on age of pipe. You can do it 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. You've got to leave the room in the. So I hear people saying all the time, man, we just updated our plan. It was supposed to last for 25 years. I can tell you why it's not lasting for 25 years, because you forgot that I&I is going to continue to generate in the pipes that are already in the ground. So that's going to continue to add to the flow at your plant.
Yeah.
So these are big misconceptions that are throughout our industry, and I keep finding this stuff, and it's so obvious to me. But yeah, there's so many things we need to think about to make sewers better. There's a lot of things we have to think about.
There is a
So
lot.
yeah,
That's for
yeah.
sure. Well,
So,
look, both of you are amazing and you've provide so much value and education. That's why I love having you both on these podcast episodes, these events we have, because your information and experience is very valuable to the audience. And I think that's one of the biggest things that you guys are promoting and bringing out to what you're trying to do is just provide that education that we're talking about. And that's what we're doing here is just getting the word out and just talking about real stuff, real conversations and things about infrastructure and especially sewers and I because it's never changed. It hasn't changed since I've been in the sewer industry, and it's still a problem today. So we really need
and
to rethink how we're doing things. Go
thanks to
ahead.
you, Chad, for these podcasts, because you are having all kinds of people from with all different perspectives or whatever on here, which is great. So not everybody's singing the same tune. Everybody sees things from a slightly different angle. But I mean, all of your guests have brought a lot of information to the industry, and it's wonderful that you're doing these. I find them really, really valuable. So keep up the great
Well,
work.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And Mike, how can people get a hold of you, man?
You can call me at 800-255-1521, or just simply email me at michael@mesimpson.com. And happy to talk water loss or waste or I&I, or I work on both sides of the house. So whether it's pressurized or it's flowing away, I'm here to help. But I'm happy to talk to you about technology and making the use of the power of technology to make your system better and make it work for you, not you work for it.
There you go.
Uh,
Nice.
and happy to come talk to your city council and help you. Just had this discussion, Chad, with my engineer Aaron, who the council wasn't listening to the water superintendent, so they asked Aaron to come tell them. And amazingly enough, after the meeting, they all said, "Yep, Aaron's Aaron's an expert from 30 miles outside of town," and they listened to him. And it's the
Wow.
same thing they'd been preaching, but no one would listen. And I'm like, call us up. I'll come talk to the council. I'll speak in, like Barbara does, in plain English, not over people's heads or condescending, like because they don't no, we'll explain it exactly how it works
I love it.
and help you do
Yeah.
better.
It's very great. Thanks. Go ahead, Barbara. How can people get a hold of you? Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm so enthusiastic. I always jump ahead. I was going to say something else I didn't mention, something technical, is that water loss through the interconnectivity of trenches when we build this infrastructure, water loss is getting into our sanitary sewers as I&I. So the first question I ask people when they ask me about I&I is, what's your water loss? Average in Ontario is 13%. So, I mean, whatever. But if I'm talking to somebody whose water loss is 25%, I'm saying we got to address that first, because unless the water's coming up, it's going down. And we all know water is higher in the right of way than the sewer. There's favorable interconnection between the water bedding and the sewer bedding. So equally
Great
storm
points.
sewer leakage or whatever. So,
Yeah.
if you want to find me, just Google Barbara and sewers. I'm all over the internet.
Love it. Love it. Well, I
It's
truly appreciate.
Norton Engineering Inc.ca.
Love it. Thank you both for joining me. This is a great episode, and I look forward to sharing it to everybody. And thank you again for just being on the
Thank you.
show and being
Barbara's
here.
nice to meet you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you too.
Appreciate it.
Thanks to both of you. Have a great weekend, everybody.
You
Have a
too.
good one. Thanks. See ya.
Bye bye.